Welcome and thank you for joining us in the very first episode of the Triaxle podcast. We are excited to kick off this series where we will highlight the blue-collar workers and companies in all facets of the construction industry. I couldn't think of a better way to kick off this podcast than with our first guest, who was practically born into the seat of a machine, a third-generation operator and earth mover who is now a field training expert and content producer for Buildwitt, along with the founder of the badass brand Tier Zero Inc., Eric Jumper. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Happy to be here, Matt.
Great to have you. So Eric doesn't live too terribly far from me. He is down in where? In
Kittnersville.
Kittnersville.
Try to spell it.
Kittnersville.
There you go.
That's how we're going to do
we're about 20 minutes south of Easton.
Okay.
So I like it down there because I feel like we live on the border between the Lehigh Valley and the Philly area. So I don't know. I feel like I'm 30 minutes from everything. It's kind of nice.
That's a good spot.
Yeah.
Nice. So what did it take you to get here? About an hour?
No, it was like almost 2 hours.
Oh, really?
Because we stop every 45 minutes for bathroom break and Starbucks and Wawa. So it takes a while to get anywhere.
And then you're going to the Rainforest Cafe.
And then we're going to drive, I guess, to New Jersey to go to the Rainforest Cafe.
Nice.
For lunch. / dinner.
Good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, I really appreciate you coming up.
Yeah.
This is our very first podcast, and glad to have you here
for sure.
As our first guest. So I've been following you on Instagram for quite a while. You have definitely a wide array of experience in anything dirt moving related. How did you actually get into the business? You had a landscaping company when you were very young. What age did you start that at?
So it would have been earlier in life, but my mom was afraid that I was going to cut my foot off with the lawnmower. So, let's see. It probably would have been like 12 years old. I had been doing stuff. My dad had showed me how to work, wrenching on things, but I think I actually technically took my first transaction in exchange for landscaping services when I was 12. So I'd walk around the neighborhood. I'd have a push mower and I'd walk around to the neighborhood and I would go door to door, knocking on people's doors and be like, "Hey, I'll cut your grass for $20. And that's kind of how it all got started.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Most kids at 12 won't even get off the couch or out of bed to do anything.
I mean, hindsight, I probably wouldn't do that again, but yeah, it was a lot of work. So I did that. The deal that I had with my dad was that if I wanted to buy like a new lawnmower or something, if I came up with half the money, he would put down the other half of the money. And that was a huge help, like having him to, support me. And if I had a big job come up, if I had like a big cleanup job or a big mulch job, he would help out with that stuff. He'd come out for the weekend because he had, been working a full-time job the entire time too. So
you started mowing lawns at 12 and
Yep.
you just kept
going. Yeah, I don't know. I just had aspirations that were probably too big for what I was trying to do. I think the part that kind of changed things for me. So in the summer of 2012, my dad was a superintendent for Latona, so he was handling the cell expansion at the Bethlehem landfill. So when I was 14 or 15, the roller operator on the job quit. So they were just doing a massive cut and fill on the job, and they needed a bunch of roller operators. So the one roller guy quit. My dad's like, "Well, the kid's he's on summer vacation, so he can come work for us for 2 months." The problem is the landfill, and I was 14. So we all pretended that I was 18. Obviously, I couldn't actually take a check from this company, so they just I don't know. I can't remember if they paid my dad and put in his paycheck, or if I think they were paying me cash. I don't remember.
You were compensated somehow.
I was getting paid because I remember buying the lawnmower at the end of the year, but that was my first real experience with dirt work. And, I'd gone to work with my dad all the time as a kid, but I'd never actually, worked in that aspect. And I don't know. At the end of the summer, I was like, yeah, I want to do that. I don't want to cut grass anymore. I want to do that. I don't want to do landscaping. So I kind of like changed the gears in my head, and then fast forward a couple years, this opportunity for a big demo project popped up in Mountaintop, and I was in my senior year of high school, or it would have been my junior year. So my dad actually ended up quitting his job, and the whole family was all in on this demo project. So we were borrowing. There was a site work company on site. We were borrowing their machines at after hours, and it was right across the street from my high school, so I would drive over after school, and we'd work until 10 o'clock at night. There was miles of pipe in the ground, like cast iron pipe with lead joints. So we're ripping all this pipe out of the ground. It was me and my two younger brothers. They're over there pulling the lead joints out of the pipe, and we ended up making so much money on the scrap from the job that we bought our first skid steer, we bought our first single axle dump truck, and we bought a 10-ton tag trailer.
From the scrap income.
Just from the scrap income that we had almost no money invested in. Because we borrowed all the equipment. The only thing we paid for was fuel and like pizza every day for everybody, because we had to feed everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, we that's what started the whole thing. I actually the picture, because we worked on that from like December until April of like 2013. And the picture just popped up this week because this was the anniversary of buying all the equipment. I've got the picture of the Mac and the little New Holland skid steer and the trailer in front of our house, because that's where we had to park it. Yeah. In our residential development. So we took that and we started a landscaping and excavating company. Got into some bigger stuff down the road. I would say the last big project we did was there was over in Jessup, there's a bunch of dams. So the city of Jessup used to get their water from a natural spring at the top of the mountain. And there's a series of dams, and the problem that they're having is that people are going up there and they're swimming and they're like afraid somebody's going to die. So they're in the process of removing all of these dams, and we did number 2, and really cool project. And so that was probably our last big job we did. We had to rent a bunch of bigger iron because we didn't have anything big enough for the job. Yeah, I mean, the whole time, I think we were in business for 6 years, and the whole time it was just, I don't think we ever took a break. Like, we were always working from sun up to sundown. There was days where my dad, like, he would sleep in the excavator because he would work all day. He would be out there till midnight, and he would just like lean the seat back and take a nap and then wake up and keep going. So yeah, I mean, it was a grind. But at the end of it, we realized that none of us are really that good at running a business. None of us had the desire to actually do the business part. So we decided to all kind of just go our separate ways and sell off what we could and get rid of the rest. And most of them moved to South Carolina. I stuck around for another 2 years. That's when I went to work for Mushlets. So I got, the thing about working in NEPA is that there's a lot of big dirt work, but it's a lot different as soon as you go through that Lehigh Valley Tunnel. So it's a whole different world down there. So that was where I kind of got a different skill set, working with mass excavation in more of a, I would say, a rural setting, we'll call it. So a lot less rock, a lot more shale, more clay. That was where I first learned how to run a scraper. I got a bunch of scraper experience. I picked up on scrapers really easily. It was the first company that I used GPS. So obviously Jumper Landscaping never had a need for GPS systems. So I learned how to do scraper. I learned finished dozer work. And then I was like, oh, well, the winter layoff thing kind of sucked, because I was working for the ski resort in the winter, but it was like a 20%. It was 20% of my income normally. So I was like just barely paying the bills. I'm like, this kind of sucks. I don't want to do this. So my dad finally convinced me to move down to South Carolina with the rest of the family. And again, just a different world, different types of dirt, different types of work, different culture, and just, kind of adapted. Took the skills that I had from working up north and took them down south. Did a lot of utility work, put a lot of pipe in the ground. So I got my first real experience for pipe. The job that I was on was the first fast-paced construction project I've ever worked on. So I worked on the same site for 3 years on and off. So it's just a never-ending facility expansion for a data company, a data center. Learned how to put water line in, learned how to put force main and gravity sewer in, electrical, fiber optic. Learned a lot about fiber optic.
Did you hit any?
No, because learned a lot about vac trucks, because at that particular facility, you were not allowed to mechanically excavate within 15 feet in any direction of a utility. So the company I was working for, their bread and butter was actually vac truck. So learned how to run a vac truck, learned how to utilize vac trucks. Got a lot of loader experience. I spent 8 months straight in the same 938 loader. So I got really good at running loaders. Yeah, just did a lot. Ended up leaving that company for a little bit. Went down to Florida for a few months. Got a whole other skill set. Working with a buddy of mine, building equestrian horse riding arenas outdoors in Ocala. So Ocala is just like the epitome of horse country.
That is horse country down there.
Yep.
My father-in-law has a place in Lake Weir, which is not far from there.
Yep.
And yeah, that's beautiful country.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of money down there. So learned, that was my first experience with a rototilt style bucket. So he had an Incon on a 308 with GPS. So it was my first experience with 3D earthworks GPS. And then for the riding arena, for the final grade, he also had a laser grader on a 299. So just learned all these different things with that. Did that for a few months, came back, worked for went back to that same facility that I was working at, but for a different company. So they were doing a much bigger expansion, and ran a GPS dozer for them for probably 6 or 7 months. So learned a new GPS system. I learned all about TopCon. I kind of learned. So the thing that I was missing this whole time was doing one of these big jobs from start to finish. So I was able to sort of put all my knowledge together for that one and watch the job come to fruition instead of coming into it in different pieces and leaving or getting pulled to another job. So it's really cool to be there and be able to go through the whole process, because that kind of helped a lot of things click for me. Left there, went back to the company that I started there with, and ended up running their. I was working in their utility and construction division. They have a smaller site work and paving division. So I ended up going over to run that. So I was the operations manager / project manager for them. So I was bidding the work. I was hiring people. I was physically doing the work a lot of the times because we didn't have enough people. So that was a huge learning experience. That was fun because I was able to take, I think the piece that I was missing with jumper landscaping was a lot of patience. I was able to take what I knew about bidding work and managing the work, and I took all these new skills of actually doing the work that I've been developing and combined them. And I had a pretty good time. The problem was that management just, I don't know. One of the things that they brought me in to do was sort of bring the company up to speed, because this is 2020 and they were still using stakes for all of their grading projects. They bid everything by hand. They don't have any bidding software.
No software at
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. The only thing they have is QuickBooks. So they brought me in to sort of, the first order of business was to buy a GPS dozer, and I started pricing dozers out, and they're like, "Oh, never mind." So I just kept like hounding. I only worked there for 4 months. I just kept hounding them because I was like, we need a dozer for this project. And what started, I wanted to build the ultimate site work bulldozer. So I was going to have a D51 LGP with a 3-shank ripper. And then it was going to have, at the time, nobody had Trimble on a Komatsu. Nobody had Trimble Earthworks on a Komatsu dozer yet. So I actually had to find somebody to tell me that it was possible so that I could order it. And I put the bid together, or I put the quote together, and it was just shy of $250,000 because it was a custom spec dozer and it was custom. Site tech was going to have to get involved to install the GPS. And the company said kick rocks. So
no thanks.
We went from the best dozer I could have ever had to a non-GPS D3, which at the time was still a D3. And I was like, that's what we have now. So it's just the newer version of what we have now. And then finally they were like, no, we just don't have it in the budget. Just keep using what we have, or we were renting a dozer. So we didn't even have one at the time. And the same day they told me that, I went up to the owner's house to drop a bucket off, and they were dropping off the brand new speedboat for one of the kids. And I was like, where's my dozer over there?
Yep. Priorities, right?
Yep. So amidst all of this happening, me and Buildwitt had been going back and forth for probably about a year. And right after I started working for this company, Aaron called me. He's like, hey, I think we're finally ready to hire you. I'm like, I've kind of got this really good gig over here now, not knowing what was ahead of me. And I was like, man, I don't know. I'm pretty happy where I'm at. If it changes, I'll call you. So then 4 months later, I was like, yeah, I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready. Yeah. So I called him on a Friday. I called him on a Friday before Memorial Day. And the following Thursday, I was out on site with them. So I was in South Carolina. I drove up to Richmond, Virginia for my first ever trip. And we drove around Carter Machinery and just kind of hung out and took some photos. And it was sort of like a trial run to see, if it was what I wanted and if I was what they wanted. And worked out pretty good. They made me an offer and I went over.
Awesome.
So I've been there I started there in September of 2020. So we're going on 3 years. So
cool.
Yep.
So that company, they brought you in to help them adapt and make some changes and
they
get
wanted
them
to
up
make
to
no
speed.
changes. Yeah.
And then ultimately they just stayed right where they were at and
Yep.
refused to accept your knowledge and your input that you were trying to give to them.
And as far as I know, they're still in they have the exact same equipment. They have the same people and they're doing the same stuff.
And more speedboats.
Yes. And they probably have more speedboats.
Cool.
Well, I don't know. So it's a little tricky because it's the owner and the owner's wife, and they're getting divorced, and I think the company's splitting in half. So it's probably a good thing I'm not there anymore. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, it was a great opportunity. I just wish it would have worked out. But.
Sure. Well, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but sometimes it gives you, you don't realize it at the time, but it helps branch into a better opportunity. And it seems like, you have a great thing going at Buildwitt. Looks like, from the outside, watching your social media, it looks like a pretty awesome job. You get to travel the country, travel the world, filming equipment. It looks like a lot of fun. So when did you had Jumper Landscaping, then you had these other jobs in the site work field, but during that time you started recording your work.
Yes.
And you started, videoing that. How did you get into that, and what made that click for you?
It kind of started with Jumper Landscaping. So I was the one that sort of helped promote the company online. I was always posting all the stuff we were doing because I thought it was cool. Nobody else cared, but I thought it was cool. So I think the first year in business, I went and bought like a professional camera because nobody else at the time was taking legit photos of their job sites. So I wasn't very good at it at all, but I was taking as many photos as I could. And I kind of dropped it a little bit in 2018 when I went back to work. And then when I moved to South Carolina, so that data center that I was on was very anti-photo. So I couldn't do anything. I mean, I had to have 3 different badges just to get in the gate.
Oh.
So it was kind of a nightmare. It sucked because I was doing a lot of really cool, unique work that I have yet to see anywhere else or be able to document anywhere else. And I was like, man, this sucks. I wish I could like post more of my work. So then I had the idea of like, oh, I'll just drive around to different job sites after hours and take photos. So I did that for a week. And then I was like, oh, I'm just going to buy a drone. So I just bought a drone. And if I had like a rain day or something, I would go around and find a job site, and ended up just being the guy in Charleston that would take pictures of your job site. And everybody was like, oh, here he is again, the guy that's going to get in our way and stop production.
And that was you just like driving around and finding
Yeah,
sites.
no,
they weren't calling you and hiring you.
Nope.
It was just Eric with his drone.
Nope, nobody. I didn't make a single dime. I didn't ask for any money. I just showed up and got in the way. So that was what kind of got me, I would say, recognized at Buildwitt. Between that and me just bullying Aaron on social media for a year, that's how I got to being there. Yeah.
Cool. Good deal. So what is, with everything that you've done, you've had a very diverse history, and you went from the operating side and now you're on, now you're behind the camera. Which one, can you pick one that you like better? Do you feel more comfortable or feel like you belong where you're at now? Do you wish you were sometimes running a machine, or do you like where you're going?
Oh, I wish I was running a machine every day.
Okay.
Every day I'm like, oh man, I wish I was doing something every day. But I know that what I'm doing outside of being in a machine is more impactful and provides, I don't want to say more value because that would imply that running a machine is not valuable, but knowing what I know and the perspective that I have, I that's how I keep myself on track. Running a piece of equipment for me it has limitations as far as how much I can do. You can only push so much dirt in a day. You can only dig so many holes. But I feel like what I'm doing and how I'm able to reach people and things of that nature are, I don't want to say infinitely variable, but there's a lot more possibility, if that makes sense.
It does.
So yeah, no, I think so. When I started at Buildwitt, it was 6 months that I wasn't in a machine, which is the longest time period ever that I was not in a piece of equipment. And I was so worried the whole time throughout that. I was like, oh man, I'm going to lose it. I'm not going to be able to do it anymore. I'm not going to be able to run a machine. First time I got back into an excavator, was like riding a bike.
Yeah.
You don't forget anything. It's weird. So it was weird because I never had that experience before. And I was like uncomfortable for the first couple minutes, but it was fine. So yeah, now I try to, every chance I get, I'll just go run a piece of equipment. Turns out, if you just show up at a job site on a Sunday and put a key in something, nobody cares.
Because they're not there.
Yeah, nobody cares. So yeah, if you just want to go run a machine, just show up on a job site.
Yeah.
No, it's cool though. I've made enough friends that, if I just want to go work for a day, hey, can I come? You need any help? Like, yeah, of course we need help. Come on.
Sure. Everybody needs help. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's cool. I would love to be in a machine more, but it also doesn't pay as well. So most of the time. So I like that I think my skill set is more valuable than, running a piece of equipment. So
what's your favorite machine to run?
So probably a scraper, because I think I have some sort of illness that draws me to scrapers, because you have to, there's a special type of person that actually wants to run a scraper, but it's such an enjoyable piece of equipment to run because you can just watch the earth disappear, and it's the fastest way to move dirt, and it's super enjoyable.
They're pretty neat. I've never seen one in person because we're all rock up here.
Sure.
We just don't have it, but I've seen your videos. I've seen other videos that Buildwitt puts out and across social media, and they are pretty impressive. They move a lot of material quick.
Yeah.
I've never seen one in person.
Yeah. It's also a dying thing, and people still need them. So I went to Aspen last year to strip topsoil on a project, and they needed a scraper to do it. Otherwise, it was going to take them like 3 weeks to do it with an excavator. And the guy calls me and he's like, hey, I heard you have scraper experience. Do you want to come run the scraper? So, being proficient at that was the only thing that got me into the Aspen Scraper Club, which is like a party of 6. So it was the first time that a scraper's been in Aspen since, I think it was like 1987.
Oh, wow. They really had that figured out.
Because the last time they had scrapers was when Kiewit built the airport in Aspen.
Oh, wow.
So they had 627s. So they had like 4 or 5 guys that were doing that. And then there was me. And then when I left, I trained another guy how to run the 623. So it was like 6 or 7 guys. Very, very tight knit crew. We meet every Thursday. Club. Yeah.
In Aspen or
in
through
Aspen.
Zoom?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you've been all over the world.
No. Nope.
No?
Just 48.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I have like 7 states to go. Okay. I figured it out the other day.
So you weren't at Bama then?
Nope, didn't go to Bama.
Okay.
I have my passport, but I haven't left yet.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Cool. So within the lower 48, do you have a favorite area of the country, favorite projects that you've been to? What's really like, gotten you fired up with what you've been doing the past couple of years?
Southern California for dirt work is nuts. So I like going there as often as physically possible. I hate the state, but it's absolutely beautiful. I have a picture of probably I don't want to say it's the best picture I have, but one of the coolest photos I have. It looks like the Windows background with the fields.
Okay.
The Windows XP background.
Yeah.
And it's Pinnock Construction. They had 657s and they were running right in front of this background as the sun was coming up. And right behind where they're running is actually Mexico.
Oh, wow.
So it's in San Diego. So the silt fence was actually like along the Mexican border. So it was really cool. So that was like one of the highlight. That was probably like top 3 projects for me. And we weren't even there to see those guys. We were there to see like some rinky dink utility company. So that was a cool one. I like going to Florida. We just went to Miami a couple weeks ago for North American Mining. They run all of the drag lines in Florida. There's like 10 drag lines in Florida. One of them happens to be the largest drag line in the world in aggregate operations. So you have to put that asterisk at the end, in aggregate. So there's bigger drag lines, but this is the biggest one that mines just rocks, 4 rocks. And it's really neat. So people ask me all the time, like, or people bring it up in conversation because I talk about drag lines. They're like, oh, drag lines are dying. They're going to go away soon. But they can't because there's no other machine that can do the type of work that they do. There's no machine in the world that can dig 100 feet underwater and excavate the hardest limestone in the world and then cast it up onto the surface and pile it up high enough that it can desiccate and the water can run out of it.
While moving massive yardage in one
While
scoop.
moving 125 cubic yards in one scoop.
In one scoop.
Yeah.
That's a big bucket.
Yeah. It is mind-blowing just watching it.
I've never seen a dragline in operation.
Yeah.
Would be awesome.
Next time I go to Reading, you can come out.
Let me know.
There's a couple down there.
Okay.
I have a few left. They're a lot smaller, but still cool to look at.
I want to see that one.
Jetto just opened back up. So Jetto is east of Hazleton.
Okay.
They have the largest drag line in the state of Pennsylvania.
Oh wow.
It's actually the same model as the one that was in Florida that I was just talking about. So I think it's 100 it's a smaller bucket because the material is heavier. But they've been idled for 10 years. They just opened back up because coal prices are tripling
up. Yeah.
So I haven't seen it running yet, but I've seen the lights on. So they've been running it though.
If you go down, let me know.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd love to join you.
Yeah.
Awesome. So all of your experience and everything that you've done in the industry, you have a wealth of knowledge. You're like an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
For machines.
I try to sponge up as much as possible. And if I don't know something, I've got 100 people I can point you in the direction of for your specific question.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty impressive. I have a very hard time retaining certain bits of information, specifications of machine, but I gather that you can, tell me a particular machine and all the specs running right down through
I wouldn't say all the specs, but I can I know of most machines and I know a lot about them, but there's guys that know all of the different boom specs that were available on a 345D that was sold between 2008 and 2010.
Yeah.
And they could tell you all the different buckets that were offered for sale and all the different quick hitches and all the different pad sizes. And I don't know all that, but I know enough about everything that I know what's right and what's wrong. So
yeah, cool.
Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. Yeah. Well, I know what big excavators are and little
There
excavators.
you go. That's all you need to know.
No,
the rest of it is just taking up space in my brain.
I know a little bit more than that, but no, that's awesome. So tier 0, how did that come about?
That was a joke at first. Yeah. That started when we were in Colorado, and in Colorado, they don't have emissions regulations. So the company we were visiting, Bemis Construction, which is owned by Larry Ames, who used to be part of Ames Construction. They run a fleet of 631G and E models.
So there's no emissions in Colorado.
There's no regulations. It's just like Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Same standards.
Okay.
So nobody is as strict as California. I could talk for an hour about California restrictions and how they work. But
they ruin a lot of stuff over
they
there.
do ruin a lot of stuff. California, Arizona might be coming in next. They might start implementing stuff. And nobody else really regulates it though. Maybe New York, some parts of New York, but that's more like noise regulation.
Okay.
So nobody is as bad as California, but it sucks because we all have to meet their standards for equipment. Well, for new at least.
Right.
So Bemis runs, I want to say they have 40 or 50 of these scrapers in their fleet. There's some of their machines have close to 200,000 frame hours.
Wow.
Yeah, it's nuts. So they're on engine 9 or 10. And we were watching them, and they're really cool because a 631 is a single engine scraper. It'll come into the cut, he'll bury his bowl, and just before he starts skidding his tires, he'll come to a complete stop, and he'll wait for the dozer to come up and push him.
Because he can't just push through that. He just can't.
Nope, because it's a front wheel drive scraper essentially. Right now there's 5 different configurations available for scrapers. You have single engine, which is engine in the front, back wheels have no power. They're mostly good. They're the fastest loading. So if you have a good push cat operator, which is the dozer that pushes them, that is the fastest setup for moving dirt, because they can fill up their bowl, which is about 30 yards of material, in less than 15 seconds.
Wow.
In most cases. So they can go in and they can make a deeper cut and they can get out and run to the fill. You have twin engine, which is the same style, but there's an engine in the back. These are also referred to as push-pull. So you can have 2 of them hooked together and one can push and one can pull. Problem is they take about a minute and a half to get through the cut because they can't fill up as fast. But now you're moving 60 yards at once. But you have 2 machines and you have 4 engines. We also have paddle wheel, which is the ones with the big chain conveyor. These are for more finished grade applications and picking up windrows. And then tractor pull. So I spent a lot of time on quad tracks and wheeled tractors. I call that dirt farming because it just feels like you're riding around in the field all day with your John Deere tractor. And then you have the new one on the market is the ADT style scraper. So your K-Tex or your MTS style scraper hooked up to a traditional 6-wheel articulating haul truck. So I've got experience in all of them. And they're all different in their own ways and they're used in different applications and so on and so forth. But besides the point, in Colorado, they have these 631s and they're really cool because when they're in the cut, as they're sitting there waiting to get pushed, It's like they build up fuel in the system. And then as soon as they get contact from the dozer, they floor it, which is a big smoke cloud comes out. And that's actually what the first sticker is based on. So the original scraper sticker that I started selling a year ago, well, more than a year ago, was based on one of the photos that I took when I was there. And I think how the joke started was that I think Angel from Buildwitt was asking me like, he's like, man, because he's from California. He's like, man, I've never seen smoke clouds like that. I'm like, yeah, buddy, because you got tier 4 and this is a tier 0 out here. So that's kind of where it all started. And then I didn't actually think about, I had made the sticker a year ago with the intention of starting a company under a different name because I was going to have a brand for like the whole industry. And I abandoned the idea because it was too sporadic. I couldn't find the right direction and I didn't like the name. And then like last October, somebody was like, I think I had the sticker on my hard hat or something. And somebody's like, oh, you should copyright that. And then like 2 hours later on the plane, I was like, oh, that's the company. It's just that. Yeah, that's it. So then
keep it simple.
The whole rest of the plane ride, I was like figuring out how to make it happen. And since then, it's just been learning about e-commerce, learning about retail, learning about different styles of production and design work. And I had to build a website from scratch and I had to learn how to use Shopify and I had to learn how to ship stuff. So it's been a lot, but it's been really fun.
Yeah.
So it's just, I mean, to give people more context on what it is. So tier 0 is, like I just said, it's a play on words. So it's anything that blows black smoke, anything that's old school, anything that doesn't have DEF, anything that doesn't have emissions problems. And originally the whole thing was going to be based around that, but now I'm realizing, okay, cool. We can make this a brand for the heavy equipment people of the world and even people that aren't really into equipment every day. Maybe they're on the same job site. Because when you go to a job site, what's the thing you're most drawn to? It's not the carpentry. It's not the plumbing.
It's the equipment.
Everybody likes the bulldozers. Everybody likes tractors. So I think even people that aren't in equipment every day would still have appreciation and are still interested in the brand itself. So it's a brand for anybody that's interested. We're starting to, the other reason is there's also kind of a cap to how many smoke blowing designs I can make. So I've got a lot of different ideas for things outside of just emissions related stuff. But I would say like at least half the brand is based on that. So the goal is to just make it like the go-to brand of the industry. It's been going really well. A lot of people are taking to it. We are hoping to have a warehouse by the end of the summer. I was really pushing to get one last month, but then I was like, okay, we should figure out the rest of this stuff before we go and move into a warehouse. Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of big ideas for it. I'd like to get the YouTube channel going later this summer if we have time. I want to start buying antique equipment, machines that we just find out in the field somewhere, do a series about restoring them. And then I was like, okay, well, what would I do if I restored a machine? Well, I could put it in a museum or I could have a piece of land and people can just come out and run this equipment. I'm hoping to have like a customer appreciation day in like September or October. I think that'll be cool. Everybody can come out. We just hang out for the day, run equipment and bullshit about whatever. So I don't know. There's a lot of potential. I really just want it to be more than shirts and hats and stickers. I want it to be, I don't know, all encompassing, I guess.
Sure.
So we're trying to figure out what to do with it.
Well, you definitely have a lot of traction already.
Yeah.
And you're getting a lot of attention and people, out at Con Expo. I mean,
that was eye-opening. It was truly eye-opening to see
everybody coming up to you saying, hey man, it's Eric Jumper.
Yeah. And not even that, just like talking about the brand with them and seeing like people wearing shirts and hats and having stickers on stuff that had all been in my garage just weeks prior. Like there were people. Here's how I know I made it. You know, there was a guy there. He had a Tier 0 hat on, and he didn't know who I was. And I was like, that is awesome. I love that you have no idea who I am, because that's the idea. I want the brand to be its own thing.
Sure.
So it's I don't know. It's really cool to see the industry kind of adopting it. I think it's mostly out of hatred towards mission systems, but if that's what it takes, then okay.
Well, there's definitely a lot of animosity towards.
I was actually reignited this week. We have at Buildwitt we have a 21 F250 with a 6.7, and I ran it out of DEF by accident because I kept putting it off, and then I was sitting in traffic for a couple hours, and I accidentally ran out of DEF, and I went to fill it back up, and it wouldn't register that the tank was full. And I was like, oh, this sucks. And then I kept going, and then it derated it, and I couldn't go over 45. And I was fuming. I was like, this is the dumbest thing in the world. And I guess the fix ended up being I had to turn the truck on and off like 15 times in a row to get it to reset. So it's like, well, if it didn't have exhaust fluid, which if you start thinking about the term exhaust fluid, it starts to sound ridiculous. If it didn't have exhaust fluid, I could go faster than 45.
A fluid to treat the exhaust coming out of truck.
It's ridiculous. Did you know that DEF is actually one of the most corrosive and cancer-causing like liquids that you can just buy?
I've heard that.
It's like worse than weed killer.
That's why when I accidentally spill it on my truck, when I'm reluctantly putting into it, like when I'm putting it into it, I make sure to wipe it off because it is terrible. Like we're basically treating exhaust with more garbage.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then like I'll see a lot of guys like filling up without gloves on. I'm like, dude, you're going to get cancer.
Don't touch it.
You need to put gloves on. I know everybody wants to be Mr. Tough Guy, but man, that stuff is just nasty.
It's not good.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many people know, how Triaxle came about, but I actually owned I still do own MHW companies. Sure. And we have a very diverse history of construction, excavating, demolition, paving, rock crushing. So we have had our share of horror stories.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Emissions. Yeah. And with DEF, I had a beautiful brand new 2014 F450 service.
Did you sell that? I was going to ask you about that.
I did sell it.
Oh man,
I sold it to
that was
MR.
a nice truck.
I sold it to MR Dirt last year.
MR Dirt, where are they out of?
They're up in Towanda area.
Okay,
up there.
Yeah, that was a sweet truck. Was that a Lariat or an XLT?
XLT.
Okay, yeah, that was still a sweet truck.
It was a great truck, but that truck ran like a piece of shit.
Really?
I bought it in September of 14, if I have my timeline right. And starting in January of 15, I want to say that was on a hook of a wrecker probably 5 times over the course of 2 months.
Had you ever considered deleting it?
I eventually did.
Oh, okay.
It had to go.
Did it run fine after that?
It ran like a champ.
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah.
The first time something happened, it derated, had to get it towed to the dealership. Brought it home, a couple hundred miles later, derated again.
Yep.
Towed to the dealership. There was one time where I picked it up from the dealership, drove it home, parked it in my driveway, and the next morning on my way to the job, it derated again.
Same problem over and over?
Related issues. I don't remember exactly. I have a whole file on it, but it was very disheartening. Brand new truck, less than 6 months old, and it's getting towed, and then sitting in the shop for 2 weeks, and then coming home and getting towed again. That was my first miserable experience with it.
Is this one better? This is the same engine.
This truck that I have now, I've so far, knock on wood, I've had no problem.
They seem to have figured it out. I don't know a lot of people that have issues with the Illumina Duty 6.7s. Now, if you go to Ram or Chevy, I mean, my dad just went through all kinds of stuff with his truck. Seems as soon as those Chevys turn 100,000 miles, it's like it's
over.
They just die.
Yeah.
And then, what did it cost to delete your 6.7? Like $3,000 or $4,000?
It was probably like around 3.
To delete a 6.6 Duramax and an LMM, it's like $8,000 or $9,000.
Really?
It's insane.
Wow.
because it's all they made it so hard to for the computer stuff,
Yes.
because the hardware stuff isn't that expensive, but the computer, like to remap the engine, is insane. So they were looking at deleting. He had a 6.6, and it was like almost $10,000 to get it done.
It's crazy.
And I'm sure there's guys that could do it cheaper, but man, it's if you have to do it on your own, or if you don't have the ability to do it on your own, it is expensive.
And it's one of those things like you can't stand having it. You can't live with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't afford to be without it, and you don't want the government finding out that you did anything with it. You know, depending on where you're at in the country, DOT or EPA or I guess DEP. You know, they would give you a really hard time about it. But sometimes,
I mean, we're fine here. I don't think anybody's ever had a problem in Pennsylvania.
I've heard, I don't have any specific cases, but I was always told, watch, don't get pulled over with that deleted truck. You will have a hard time with that. And the fine will be something that you don't want to hear about. But I don't know any specific examples.
Yeah.
But in my case, it was a choice. I had to keep working. When I lost the truck for a period of, it was like 2 or 3 weeks that they had it, they gave me an SUV for a rental.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's very useful.
Am I going to put a fuel tank in the back of this? I mean, I was throwing shovels and lasers and everything else in the back, but I couldn't transport anything worth a shit, Yeah. And it just became such a nightmare. I made a choice, even though I was told, watch, they're not going to be too happy about that. I was just like, well, I got to go to work. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to delete it. Yeah. And we've had other experiences, skid steers, crushers, screeners, bigger trucks, new triaxles. I don't know of anything, if we bought, let's say 20 pieces of equipment that had DEF on it, I bet you 15 gave us shit.
Oh yeah.
It was probably an issue with it.
I can believe that.
It's terrible.
I've been trying to figure out, I think like one of the ideas and concepts I have for like a spin-off of Tier Zero is like figuring out how to sell used equipment that's deleted, but new, like a next gen excavator deleted with a warranty.
Like a glider kit.
Let's call it a glider kit. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can delete anything. I know guys with 390Fs that are deleted, and they run like a champ. They've got some issues because it's not as simple as deleting a truck. So it's a little more complicated, but it can be done. And you won't have any issues for the most part. But the problem is that as soon as that happens, you cannot call Cat for anything. You can't call Deere for anything. Can't call Volvo.
Warranty work or anything?
Cat won't work on anything that's deleted.
Okay.
Warranty work, they won't do anything. But I don't, maybe Deere is different. But I know Cat will not work on something if they know it's deleted. So, but for the most part, here's the caveat is that if it's deleted, how often are you going to call Cat? You know what I mean?
Probably not often, because you can work, your regular mechanics can work on almost everything else.
So if I can figure out how to offer that with like a warranty, there's a couple of guys that are doing it right now, but I want to do it at scale. But maybe if I call it a glider kit, that's how I won't go to jail.
Tier Zero glider kits coming at you in 2024.
That would be pretty cool. I don't know if I can get Cat to sell me a 320 without an engine though. That'd be kind of tough. I don't know if they'd be down with that.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
You know a lot of people.
Yeah.
You can figure it out.
I know where there's a lot of engines with holes in the blocks, because that's the deal in California.
Really?
So they have a repower program. So the only reason I found this out is because we went and visited Quinn Cat, and I didn't realize how bad it was until I found all this out.
How bad? Like they're cracking down on this?
Yes. Well, how bad how extensive it is. So there's a credit system, right? So you can have old equipment in the fleet as long as you have, I want to say it's like it's all based on horsepower. So if you have, let's say you have like 100 horsepower of dirty diesel, you have to have 400 or 500 horsepower of clean diesel.
Because
that makes sense.
Because everything the government does makes sense. Yeah. So perfect.
Okay. So that makes total sense. So the issue is that there's companies out there with machines that Cat doesn't really build anymore, like 651 scrapers. So massive scrapers that's the model that they base their entire company off of. And they've got 60 of them. and they're from 1970. So they've got these machines. They're using them every day. Cat discontinues these machines, so you can't buy them anymore. And what are they going to do? They're going to get smaller machines. Are they going to change how they bid work, or are they going to repower the existing equipment? Now, traditionally, if you wanted to repower it, you just put the same engine in that it has in it or rebuild it. The problem is California doesn't like that, and it doesn't fit the credit system. So when you rebuild an engine, or if you repower a machine, there's a lot of different tangents on this one. But first off, the government subsidizes it so much that it's almost free. So you can repower. So to repower a 651 or like a 631, it's somewhere between $400,000 and $600,000, because you have to add the tanks for the DEF. You have to add a bunch of ladders to get to the tanks. You have to add all the systems. These machines have like 4 wires on them, so you have to add all the computer systems to run these new engines. So it's an expensive job, and the government pays for almost all of it.
Wow! Because
of the grants and stuff that you can get. So there's that, and then I don't know. It sucks because the engines because they're putting brand new engines in them. The old engines that come out, you can't even sell them. They make you torch a hole in the side of the block.
As part of the program.
Yes.
That's how you get your subsidy.
Yep. So you can have a perfectly good engine, and you can't even sell it to somebody out of state because you have to make it unusable.
And they haven't figured out how to go.
There's a guy in Arizona that figured out how to put the hole back in.
Okay,
yeah.
That's what I was going to ask. Go put the hole back in, bring it over, and show them, hey, we're going to punch this one out.
Yeah, he's gone to some of these dealers and he's been like, put the hole there. I can fix that.
Yeah, I have a plug for that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So it's funny.
I like it.
But those engines are so old that they can have a hole in the block and they'll still run just fine. So,
really?
Yeah.
Bomb proof.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It sucks. The whole thing sucks.
I mean, we could get into a whole nother podcast that goes until Monday morning about regulations, over-regulation. It just goes on and on and on. But they're certainly making it tougher for, people coming up in the business to get anywhere and make it. I mean, there's a lot of work out there. There's a lot to offer, but I feel like, some of these, I've seen it with guys like with trucks. These days when you buy 10 new triaxles, you almost need to buy 12 so you have 2 spares.
Yeah.
Because just figure on part of your fleet being broken down at some point.
If you want to buy 12 triaxles now, it's like $5 million.
Yes.
Because you're spending almost $300,000 on a new triaxle from Peterbilt now.
Yes. And they were 180.
Yeah.
Not that long ago, 150.
Yep, 150.
Even a day cab, I was told I've never bought a new day cab. I was told like 215, 230, somewhere in there for a day cab tractor.
Yep.
It's
crazy.
It's insane. So not only are they over-regulating and making these things run less efficient, they're not as powerful, but they've increased the cost on them so much.
Yeah.
It's getting tough for new guys to get up in it. Even existing companies just to afford, just like you're talking about these guys out in California, just to update their fleets.
Oh, I can't imagine starting a company right now. I cannot even fathom starting an earth moving company right now.
It's getting insane.
Yeah.
I mean, the cost and the old stuff is beat.
Yeah.
It's not out there.
Yep. Exactly.
Same thing with trucks. I just delivered a 99 Kenworth W900 this morning that I sold. It was the last of our tractors from our MHW side, red one.
The red one. That was who had that? Powell's had that, didn't they? Yeah, that was the Powell's truck.
I bought it in 2012 off of Powell's. And that 99 W900, I would take that any day over my 2021 T800.
Mm-hmm.
You just, when you get on the throttle of that thing, we had to boost it up a little bit. It's going to go.
Yep.
It's going to start. It's going to be reliable. Mm-hmm. You're not putting DEF into it. And I didn't really have a need for it anymore. So I decided to sell it. But as I closed the door for the last time this morning, it's like, damn, I'll never get one of these again. And that's the end of that.
Mashopin didn't want it?
No, they didn't want it.
Really?
No,
wow.
I didn't push them too hard on it.
Yeah, okay.
They just didn't ask for it.
Sure.
So I sold it to a guy in New Jersey.
That's cool.
And the value, is almost double what I had paid for it.
Really?
Years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
It is funny.
You probably used that truck so much, and it probably paid for itself.
That thing
3 or 4 times over.
hauled a lot of dirt.
Yeah.
Hauled a lot of stone. Hauled a lot of equipment.
Yep.
And then we sold it for almost double
That is unreal.
what we had paid for, and that's the value of these pre-emissions vehicles these days.
It's crazy.
Nobody wants the other stuff. You know, the new trucks are nice. The new equipment, they're nice, shiny, clean, but they just don't run
Not the same.
the way the old stuff did. So
Sucks.
yeah, I know. But that'll be another podcast where we talk about how we're gonna fix the government and all everything everything that's going wrong with that.
Yeah.
So with Tier Zero, so you have a phenomenal start. You have a heck of a following, 20-some thousand followers on your Instagram already. Are you able to keep up with the demand? Are you kind of like?
I'm limited by how fast we can get product now.
Okay.
So yeah, we're moving a lot of stuff. It's just a matter of like keeping the momentum going, and also like diversifying as much of the product as possible. Because how many times are you going to buy the same shirt
Sure.
or the same sticker? You know what I mean? So trying to just make it that people continue to want it. It's new, it's fresh every time. We've kind of determined it's me and another guy that are kind of running it, and we've put a lot of thought and time into. We've also looked at a lot of other companies, and we've determined that there's 3 different types of companies that exist. You can either have, so we get a lot of inspiration from like the firearms community.
Okay.
So there's a lot of like tactical guys and tactical companies, and there's probably like 1,000 little niche companies that sell their own thing. They're all based on limited supply drops. So they'll make one product every couple months, and they'll pump it up for a month or 2, and then they'll sell out in like 2 hours, if that. And then there's other companies like I don't know, like sports companies that we follow, or like car companies, or like Black Rifle Coffee. They'll do more seasonal stuff. So you'll have a product drop, and they'll sell that for like 3 or 4 months, or like once a quarter. They'll update a few things, and then you have the remaining pot is, I call it legacy. So you have products that a company will come out with and they'll sell forever. We've determined that we need to be a mix of all 3 of those things to be existent in this space. So the thing that I've immediately recognized about the dirt world and people of the dirt is that they're a little slow to the draw, because they're not on social media all day. They're not watching. I've got guys that'll, they'll message me because they'll be like, "Hey man, I'm going to miss the drop. Can you like hold one for me? Because I'm going to be at work." Because they have stuff to do. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I've determined that like, okay, the limited drop isn't for everybody, because that's what everybody told me to do. Like, just drop 1 or 2 at a time, or drop a few items at a time. And I don't know. It doesn't work for the whole community, and I feel bad that people are missing out on it. So, yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing. It's just like figuring out the demographic and figuring out what people want, and trying to tailor the company to best suit the industry, so that people actually want the stuff. Because there's a lot of brands out there. I don't want to talk shit about anybody specifically, but there's a lot of brands out there that just, you can obviously tell that they're pandering to a specific. They're trying to pander to a generalized audience and grab everybody.
Sure.
Nobody wants to focus on one thing because they're afraid that they're not going to sell as well. And I think that actually hurts people.
In reality, if you kind of hyper focus on one specific area, it might take you a little bit longer to scale and to find your user, but ultimately that's your target audience and that's your customer. So.
And the people can tell if it's bullshit, or if it's pandering, or if they're actually genuine. And I think we're trying to be as genuine as possible.
Sure.
Yeah.
I see a lot. There's a lot of brands out there.
Sure.
There are. You see them all over the place, and some I'm like, yeah, that's okay, and others I'm like, oh no, that's crap.
Yeah.
But I like it. Really like Tier Zero. I think that like the logo, the branding is sweet. The theme and the general overview and how it came about. I think most people in the industry can get behind your but people can get behind you.
Yeah.
Who likes emissions? Who likes that?
Exactly. Nobody. And then we're starting to do like the this upcoming week, I've got a shirt that we're dropping. It's the first thing that's like really totally like non-emissions related, because it's just like, it's a hydraulic hammer. It's just like hammer time.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be a good gauge of like how people are going to take to that stuff. And then, you know, we do really dumb shit too. Like I've got a sticker that says, greasing is a myth. Like obviously I think that you need to grease your machines, but I just thought it was funny that, you know, people actually found stuff like that humor, or like shoveling tracks is for suckers.
Sure.
No, you don't need to shovel your track.
Nobody wants to do that shit.
So I know there's a lot of different directions we can go in it. So
sure.
I don't know. We'll see where we land.
Cool. Well, I wish you the best of luck with it.
Appreciate it.
Definitely a great brand.
You want to talk about Triaxle for a minute?
We can talk about Triaxle.
You
going to interview me?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, counter interview.
All right.
Yeah.
A 2-for-1 deal.
Yeah, because it is the first Triaxle podcast.
This is the first Triaxle podcast.
Yeah. We'll have to get some Tier 0 ad space on there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how's Triaxle been going?
Triaxle's been going very well.
Yeah.
Very well. It's a whole new world for me, kind of, I guess, you know, similar to you pivoting from the machine to being behind the camera. I'm going from, being on site, being in the machines, being in trucks, to sitting at my desk all day or traveling the country and promoting our app. But it's going very well. We think as time goes on and it gains traction, and right now we're just trying to let people know what it's all about.
Sure.
We have a pretty nice East Coast following. Obviously, my local network here in Northeast PA boosted it up. Yeah. And it's getting out there. But I think as time goes on, people realize what we're trying to do. I mean, we want to connect the entire industry. We want to streamline the process of locating materials, locating clean fill sites, finding that subcontractor that, can do your concrete work or do your framing for a new development. We just want to simplify it, streamline it, and make it more useful. And as the new generation comes up, I think it's obvious we're not going to get their phones out of their hands. Sure. It's just not going to happen. Yep. I spent a long time, walking around job sites saying, "Hey, get your phone, get your phone out of your hand." And now I'm like, "Hey, everybody, put your phone and use my app." So I'm kind of switching roles here, but I think it has a lot of potential. We have a big vision for it.
Sure.
Big plans. And we're hoping that it can be a useful tool for the industry and kind of a new way of doing business. And we really think with the right education and the right, momentum behind us, that we can, move across the country. And our goal is to get, everybody in the country on it. Everybody sure. in the dirt business, construction, anybody from an excavation company to the porta potty company, the rental company, hydrovac companies, anybody and everything in the business belongs on Triaxle. So it's just down to spreading the word and showing people how they can use it and how it can be beneficial for them.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
We have a vision. We'll kind of see how it goes.
The Craigslist for dirt.
Craigslist for dirt.
Yeah.
Tinder for dirt.
Tinder for dirt. There you go. That's probably better.
A lot of people have used that analogy. Yeah. I'm like, I guess, whatever.
Yeah. Whatever gets you there.
Whatever gets you there.
Yeah.
Whatever sells. So
cool.
All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. It was great having you up for a chat.
Yep. Glad to be on the inaugural podcast. That's always fun.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you up. And I'll be looking forward to seeing what you do with Tier 0. And I wish you the best of luck with wherever it takes you.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Thanks.